Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know. I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome once again to Medical Marijuana Radio for Saturday, the 11th of July, 2015. I'm your host, Larry Love, and we're here every week to bring you the greatest, latest breaking news on adult use and medical marijuana from all over the globe. This week, our guest will be Chad Seimer, who has a group up in Washington State for seniors. It's going to be all about seniors and why they should be using cannabis and bringing them back into the fold, let's say, after they have given it up after trying it in their youth. So we'll be doing that in the second half. But first, as always, we have some news for you. 1, 2, 3.
I've got news for you.
Yes, we've got news, and first we're going to start off locally here in New Mexico. Many states, of course, are going on becoming medical states and recreational states, and there's an application process that has to people that want to grow marijuana, cannabis, and dispense it. You have to go through a big application process through the state. Now, here in New Mexico, everything is a secret. There's a wall of secrecy. And here's an article from the Santa Fe Reporter just a couple days ago. Secrets suck. Lawsuit seeks documents to reveal state's methods on licensing for medical cannabis producers. This is just yesterday, July 10th, written by Julianne Grimm. The state shouldn't be able to keep secrets about who's been awarded licenses from the state to grow and sell cannabis, argues a lawsuit filed this week in district court. Independent journalists Peter St. Cyr and New Mexico Foundation for Open Government say the New Mexico Department of Health has violated the State Inspection of Public Records Act by repeatedly refusing to identify license holders or applicants for the licenses. Quote, plaintiffs believe that secreting the identities of medical marijuana producers distorts the market for the medicine, deprives the New Mexicans of important information about their neighborhoods, and has the potential to promote cronyism and corruption in the awarding of valuable state licenses, reads a complaint filed by attorney Kip Purcell in 2nd Judicial District Court in Albuquerque on Thursday. The Department of Health adopted an administrative rule keeping information about producers confidential, but Purcell argues that that's not permissible under state law. Carving out exceptions to the public's right to know is a job for the legislature, he tells SFR. An executive department can't exempt its own records from IPRA unless the text or the spirit of the governing statute demands that result. In our view, the DOH's determination to shield identities of medical marijuana producers has no such statutory basis, end quote. The Open Government nonprofit has been trying to coax the records out of the health department's medical cannabis program since 2009, the year the licenses were first issued, after a 2007 law went onto the books to allow patients with certain conditions to buy the plant from state-authorized growers. Obviously, our arguments did not persuade the DOH to change their position, so our only alternative was to file this suit, says Susan Bowe, Foundation's executive director. Peter St. Cyr, who has reported regularly on the medical cannabis program for the Santa Fe Reporter, says his interest in the documents is about protecting the public. There is no reason for health regulators to shield the names of medical cannabis growers and sellers, St. Cyr says. The fact that these licenses can't be sold, exchanged, bartered, or transferred to other growers and revert back to the Department of Health is clear proof that they are public licenses, end quote. Further, he says patients in the program want to know if the folks who want to make a living selling pot actually have horticultural experience or if they're just out to make money, he says. Plus, journalists want access to the information to evaluate the fairness of the application and selection process for growers. We want to see if the licenses are being awarded to political donors or cronies or to well-qualified growers, he says. We are also interested in seeing if licenses are distributed in a diverse manner. For decades, we've been locking up African Americans for selling cannabis, but now that we've made it legal for medicinal purposes, we want to see if all the licenses were awarded to white men, end quote. Other states have made their medical marijuana licensing process more transparent. Massachusetts, for instance, requires its producers to agree to be publicly identified. We're going to keep you up on this, and of course, there's been rumors, and of course these are only rumors, and but they've been going around for months and months, that Governor Martinez's husband wants to get a dispensary license, that Darren White, former Albuquerque politician, has supposedly licenses into to the DOH. Let's see, what other, of course we know that there's some current LNPPs that have second licenses in. Let's see, who else? There's a rumor, only rumor, I have no substantial evidence, that Gerald Peters, who is a big player here in the art world in Santa Fe and also in the restaurant world, supposedly he's got applications in. So we'll have to see in the next couple of weeks how this all rolls out, because I do believe that the Department of Health will be awarding some of these licenses, hopefully up to 12 before August 1st, and I'll keep you on top of that, and hopefully we can get Peter St. Cyr and on the show next week or in the weeks to come to talk about this lawsuit. And personally, I think that this should all be public record, and we need to know who's growing our medicine. We need to know who's financing these opportunities to grow money on trees. Okay, next up. Up in Colorado, they had a bunch of dispensaries that got caught using bad pesticides. Here is a list broadcast by Anoncast. That's the anonymous people, have a podcast now. This is a part of their Anoncast from a couple of days ago, talking about boycotting certain dispensaries that got caught using these bad pesticides. It's a short list. This is only 19 seconds long, but one of them actually has an application in here with one of the current producers to grow cannabis here in New Mexico. Here's this report from Anon. It's a list of the dispensaries in Colorado that have cheated.
At this time, Anonymous, along with the Cannabis Consumer Coalition, is calling for a boycott of the following dispensaries for their use of illegal pesticides: Altitude East Treatments, Evolutionary Holdings, Green Cross Colorado, Green Solutions, Mindful, Organic Greens, Rhino, and Sweet Leaf.
So that is the list of dispensaries. The Green Solution is one that, again, has a application into New Mexico to start growing medicine here with one of the current LMPPs who is asking for a second license. So people up there in Colorado and people traveling, boycott those dispensaries. You don't know what you're getting. But Colorado pot shops are saving money for the state. And here's this report.
Heading to work this morning, you may notice some surprising signs along the side of the highway.
A new thing in Colorado, they're sponsored by the state's booming cannabis industry. But are they legal? Fox 31 Denver's Jim Hooley joins us with how the pot shops are getting around a ban on some advertising.
Good morning, Brooke and Kirk. We have so many pot shops all over the state now, but they're limited, very limited as to how they can advertise and the way they can advertise, especially when it comes to reaching out to a mass audience. But that hasn't stopped them from teaming up with CDOT, the highway people, and a program they call Clean Colorado. You might call this a sign of the times because these signs now popping up all over the highways, all over the state. The dispensaries are paying some big bucks to sponsor the Clean Colorado program. They're basically paying for the cleanup of litter and trash along the sections of the roadways where their signs are. In return, of course, they get their name out there. One shop we talked to has already spent more than $100,000 for more than 20 signs in the Denver area.
For people to say that cannabis industries are not doing great things for the community, you know, on our side, we're like, yeah, we're spending a lot of money for the general population, and that's something we don't have to do. And it is, you could look at it as an advertisement, but at the same time, it's definitely not advertisement.
Under law, the state regulations specifically ban any mass media advertising, including TV, radio, and billboards, too. Anything visible where 30% or more of the audience could be minors. So it's a very gray area. We talked to CDOT. They say they believe it's a form of sponsorship. They don't call it advertising, but they stress that already. The Clean Colorado program has saved the state millions of dollars in highway cleanup funds. In Denver, Jim Hooley, Fox 31 Denver. Good day, Colorado.
So, interesting, you know, they are helping. They were donating money to clean up highways and so forth. And, of course, advertising is not legal, but it's a way that some of these people get around silly laws. All right, next up, very important, of course, is always our veterans. I heard this the other day, and I wanted to play this for you, and then we'll follow it up with Dr. Sue Sisley, who's been trying very, very hard to take care of veterans and do some studies on PTSD. But here is one veteran's perspective of medical marijuana.
My name is Adam House. I served in the 173rd Airborne Brigade Combat Team, 15-month deployment to Afghanistan in 2007, 2008. You know, times there's mounted patrols, other times it's a lot of guard duty. It was a hotly contested zone. There was artillery rounds going out all hours of the day and night. And, you know, while I was there, I didn't even realize how accustomed and comfortable I'd become, even being able to sleep through that. But when I got home, things were a lot different. I think one of the things that was really tough for me, and more so after my experience overseas, when I got back and realized that I had a bit of a problem readjusting back to civilian life. I was diagnosed with chronic severe post-traumatic stress disorder and medically retired from active duty. When I came home, I was on 13 different pharmaceuticals at one time. I don't have to be a doctor to know that it's probably not healthy for me to put 13 pharmaceuticals in my body every day. We definitely need some reform in cannabis laws, because even if the VA wanted to, they technically, under the federal guidelines, they can't prescribe cannabis. And there's plenty of situations and examples out there where veterans at least claim that they're getting some benefit from using cannabis for PTSD and other symptoms. I think there's enough evidence at this point to prove that it can very much be an intrinsic part and a really important part of somebody's recovery from PTSD. I think it should just be assumed that we would be allowed to make our own healthcare choices. Choices about the medications and other things that we do or don't put in our bodies is between us and a doctor. It's ironic when you come back from the fight overseas and come home and you're in a position where you're kind of vulnerable and dealing with some serious health issues anyway, And the last thing that somebody with serious health issues needs is to be trying to fight just for access to medication and to the health care that one feels is best for themselves.
And Dr. Sue Sisley, a researcher in Arizona at the University of Arizona, got a grant to do the federal study, and then we've talked about the story before, and then she had to, she got fired because there was a politician, I think her last name was Yee, who went up against her and decided that they didn't want to do research in marijuana. And so Dr. Sue Sisley was fired from that position, but she is now back. I'm thinking it's in Nevada, but here is a report that she did when she was, I think, still with Arizona, but it has to do with medical marijuana and PTSD, just as the veteran that we just heard, Mr. House, was talking about. So here's Dr. Sue Sisley on marijuana and PTSD.
In terms of efficacy of marijuana in treating PTSD, we have numerous anecdotal reports from our combat vets and even from other first responders like police and fire talking about how valuable cannabis has been in managing their symptoms. My name is Sue Sisley, and I am on faculty at the University of Arizona, where I practice internal medicine and psychiatry, so I'm mostly doing primary care for seriously mentally ill patients. People who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder end up on 5 or 6 different psychiatric meds, and then they're plagued with all kinds of side effects and drug interactions. The way marijuana, with its 60 or 70 different phytocannabinoids and this entourage effect, the way they all interact so elegantly with each other, the truth is that marijuana can treat the whole spectrum of PTSD symptoms with this one medication. What we find from patients is a lot of them learn how to use it more in a targeted way to manage. For instance, a lot of our PTSD patients have flashbacks at night and real trouble sleeping, and so they can simply dose marijuana in the evenings to help them decompress so that they can get some rest at night, which normally they couldn't do. And what's really the beauty of marijuana for treating PTSD is such a complex syndrome. It has so many, it's not just flashbacks and nightmares, it's also depression and anxiety and increased startle response and all kinds of, this whole array of symptoms that are not easily managed by 1 or 2 medications. The proof is in the clinical response. We're seeing patients who are able to walk away from a lot of their psych meds and their opioids and simply manage their symptoms with one drug, marijuana, and that speaks volumes. Despite what the government says about marijuana having no medical value, you can't deny all these anecdotal reports. A lot of these are high-ranking veterans who hold a lot of respect and prestige in the military complex, and they're showing the courage more and more to speak openly about their experiences with marijuana. And I think that's been the most valuable thing in trying to move this issue forward. Marijuana is the only Schedule I drug that requires a second approval by NIDA even after you've already received FDA approval. NIDA is the National Institute on Drug Abuse, and they are a big federal agency that's in charge of a lot of different things, primarily curbing illicit drug abuse. And they're also charged with administering the only legal supply of marijuana in the country that's available for FDA-approved studies. So NIDA has, we call it the NIDA monopoly. It's a term that we've coined to describe the situation where they have basically a government-enforced monopoly on the only legal supply of marijuana. So if NIDA doesn't like your study, they can essentially derail it by never agreeing to sell you marijuana for your FDA-approved study. In our frustration with trying to overcome this NIDA monopoly, we've created this political action committee called Americans for Scientific Freedom, and I think that's a very appropriate name because we are desperate to ensure that science is never trumped by politics. We believe that, rigorous scientific studies deserve to be implemented and should never be shackled by the political environment that we're in. If you want to support Americans for Scientific Freedom and contribute to this political action committee, you can go on our website, americansforscientificfreedom.com, and you can read up on some of our initiatives, both at the state and federal level. We need 500 individual donations of $10 apiece, and we would be most grateful to have your support for eliminating the barriers to marijuana research.
So she's now able to do this research, and it's going to be really exciting to hear some outcome, and we'll keep you posted on that. Thank you, Dr. Sue Sisley. Next up, before we take a break, a very interesting story. A gentleman named Hugh Hempel is a technology industry veteran, and now he's turned to being a healthcare entrepreneur. He's got two 11-year-old twin daughters that have a disease that cannabis is helping. And here is about 5 minutes of a longer piece. Google Hugh Hempel and listen to the whole piece, but here's this 5 minutes that I thought was pretty touching and important.
What goes through your mind when I tell you that my 11-year-old twins are using marijuana? Do you think to yourselves, oh my God, the drug problem in the U.S. is worse than I thought? How is it possible that 11-year-olds get access to pot? Maybe some of you thought, geez, I wonder what medical condition these kids have. The truth of the matter is, most of us don't think about medicine when we hear the word marijuana. I'm embarrassed to admit, that up until 2 years ago, I was completely misinformed about marijuana. And I think many of our population is today. I remember vividly in 6th grade being ushered into the auditorium to see a government-sponsored documentary about marijuana. It was the most scary thing I'd ever watched. People jumping off buildings, car crashes, it was mayhem. But not once was there a mention of the possibility that cannabis was useful as medicine. To be honest, in retrospect, I'm a little angry about the propaganda that our government is putting forth. It's even happening today. My big idea worth sharing is that medicinal cannabis can be the healthcare success story of our lifetimes, but only if we all engage in learning the truth and ask our federal government to end prohibition of cannabis. I'd like to introduce you to my twins, Addison and Cassidy. Believe it or not, today's their birthday. 11 years ago today, only a mile from here, they were born and came into our lives. Happiest day of my life. I love the date too. January 23rd, 2004. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unfortunately, Addie and Cassie suffer from a very rare genetic disorder called Niemann-Pick type C. This horrible disease is more commonly called, or what we call it, is childhood Alzheimer's. Their little brains are drowning in cholesterol. They're missing a protein that allows them to process cholesterol both in and out of their brain cells. The cause is neurodegeneration. They can no longer walk, and they can no longer talk. We were told that Addie and Cassie would be lucky to see their 12th birthday. After reeling with this devastating diagnosis, my wife and I dedicated ourselves to finding treatments for our twins in their lifetime. We gave up successful high-tech careers in Silicon Valley, and we became research philanthropists, raising money for research. And ultimately, we became biotechnology entrepreneurs, developing a compound. This is one of the many tentacles of the prohibition of cannabis that actually prohibits us from moving forward. My own personal experience with cannabis, along with the evidence, the science that I know about, makes me absolutely certain what I shared with you earlier. Cannabis has the potential to become the big healthcare success story of our lifetimes, but only if we allow it. here adding Cassie in a more recent picture. For those of you who are still skeptical, perhaps for those of you like my mother who still worry about the societal downside of cannabis, I ask you to look at this picture and consider the following. By limiting access to cannabis for parents like myself, you're forcing me to make a decision between the lives or well-being of my children and going to jail. How is that a fair or rational set of thinking in modern society? Our 16th president, the famous 16th president, had very strong feelings about this subject. He said, prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason and that it attempts to control a man's appetite by legislation and makes a crime out of things that aren't crimes. A prohibition law strikes a blow at the very principles upon which our government was founded. This was Abraham Lincoln, and he said these words before we had the experiences we had with alcohol prohibition or with cannabis prohibition. Someday, the federal government will spend the money on research. Someday, the NIH will actually be actively pursuing cannabis as a treatment. Until that day comes, a large group of us have come together and formed a nonprofit to organize and fund clinical research in cannabis in the private sector until we can use the academic institutions. We call the foundation People Can in honor of advocates like myself who over the last several decades have been saying what I'm now saying and whose words I didn't listen to until my own situation demanded it.
So that's People Can, and his name is Hugh Hempel, H-E-M-P-E-L. Google it, find out some more information, and it's a very touching piece. We'll be right back with our interview about seniors and medical cannabis with Chad Seimer right after these words.
It's all about the 420 MMJ Radio.
I'm Robert Platjorn with Marijuana Facts from the Silver Tour. Data from the National Highway Safety Administration shows that states with medical marijuana averaged a 10% drop in traffic fatalities. According to ForInsuranceQuote.com, marijuana users can expect a lower insurance rate than non-users. Learn more and support more education at thesilvertour.org. That's thesilvertour.org.
Have you ever had a problem with overcooking your cannabis oil? You probably wanted to rip your hair out when you burned off all the THC, right? I even cried one time when my brownies failed to make a good impression at the party. Well, I stopped crying when I found Magical Butter. Magical Butter is a device with a microprocessor-controlled program sequencer. It was designed by a scientist and a chemist to precisely extract the benefits of various herbs. Magical Butter easily makes botanical butter, oils, tinctures, lotions, sauces, and more. Magical Butter heats your oil and your herbs at the perfect temperature every time. Check us out at magicalbutter.com because it's magical. Okay, there's a lot of science and chemistry involved, but it sure works like magic.
Again, for your tinctures, butter, and oils, that's magicalbutter.com. This is a great appliance. Use coupon code LOVE to get $20 off.
I'm Robert Platjorn with Marijuana Facts from the Silver Tour. Data from the National Highway Safety Administration shows that states with medical marijuana averaged a 10% drop in traffic fatalities. According to ForInsuranceQuote.com, marijuana users can expect a lower insurance rate than non-users. Learn more and support more education at thesilvertour.org. That's thesilvertour.org.
Hi, as you know, over the next few years, the cannabis industry is going to explode into a multi-million-dollar industry. 420webdesign.com is your affordable design provider. 420 Web Design prides themselves on fair prices and a grounded staff. They listen to their ganjapreneurs' website needs. Getting into the marijuana industry doesn't need to break your bank. Our sites come with tons of features. Just a few of them include responsive designs for mobile viewers, easy to update platforms, built-in SEO and SMO tools, enterprise-level security, video tutorials, database backups, Google Maps, onboard analytics, and much more. This is backed by a decade of website design and development experience. For all of your 420 web design needs, go to 420webdesign.com. Again, 420webdesign.com. Check them out.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Hey, this is Scott from Rare Dagnus. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate you and your wonderful strains, Moonshine Haze and Ghost Train Haze, etc. So earlier today I had a chance to speak with Chad Seimer, who has a seniors group. He's out of Washington State. And here is my interview. If you're a senior or you have some seniors in your life, this is for you. We all have seniors in our life. Welcome back. And online, I have Chad from seniorsmmjnetwork.com. It's a website, and Chad is an advocate for seniors and getting them to use medical marijuana as a medicine, which people are really not used to because of all of the stigma that's been put on it from all these years. So, Chad, welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio.
Thank you very much, Larry. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you know, I'm a senior myself, but well, at least I consider myself one chronologically, not in my head. But what is the definition of a senior right now?
Well, senior, I'm basically saying any person that's 50 plus. Now, that doesn't necessarily fall into the traditional guidelines, but there's a lot more of the older generation who experience more and more ills, take more and more medications. In a state like Washington, where I'm at, they have some other legal options that, you know, might be worth pursuing.
Okay, what do you mean? The legal options meaning medical cannabis?
Absolutely, medical cannabis.
Okay, so when do you have, like, you're giving seminars and so forth, so you get X amount of people there. What's the percentage of people that maybe had tried cannabis as a youngster and then maybe left it for a while or until now? How are they responding to cannabis now being a great medicine for people of our generation?
Well, I would say roughly about 30 to 40% of the people that I speak to admit to using marijuana in the past. I think there's still a little bit of a stigma attached with the senior generation. So I'm not quite sure that's an accurate percentage when I talk to them. But at the beginning, I see a lot of just kind of, you know, stiff faces. They're there, they showed up, and I know that they're interested. And towards the end, I kind of see the lips turn up a little bit into a smile, and you see the wheels turning, and that's great.
So do you actually get into educating them on what it's good for, how it can help their lives now that they're in this stage of their life?
I do. I like to touch on those subjects kind of generally. I don't possess a PhD. I am not a doctor. But amazingly, there is a lot of information out there from people with PhDs.
You don't have a pothead degree?
Well, yeah, I guess I would be certified.
Okay. So what are most of their questions? I mean, I'm sure you do a question and answer thing. What are they asking you? What are they trying to find out from you as an expert?
Well, a lot of the things that they are asking about are basically the reefer madness lines that have been drilled into you know, the head since basically the 30s. We kind of take a lot of our knowledge for granted that you know, a lot of them think that they have to smoke it, that they're going to get high. You know, back to the reefer madness stuff. You mentioned vaporizing to one of them, and I had somebody make a Star Trek comment.
Well, you know, that's interesting for me because, you know, vaporizing 6 years ago, not many people knew about that at all. And I was skeptical because, you know, I'm old school. I started smoking in 1968 when I was about 18 years old. And, you know, I like to roll a joint. And so I didn't really understand it. But once I was at a friend's house who had a vaporizer and I was able to try it, I was quite amazed and quite impressed. And of course, now 6 years later, there's so many different kinds of vaporizing devices that have just revolutionized the way that we are ingesting cannabis at this point. So you educate them about vaporizing. Now let's talk about how and what conditions or afflictions cannabis can help a senior with. What are you finding is the most common things that seniors are trying to use cannabis for?
Arthritis, kind of inflammation, sometimes just muscle spasms, light tremors.
Mhm.
Those are common among seniors, and a lot of medicines exist out there to treat that, but I don't know that they're the best.
Right. I've also been reading up about how, because this subject's near and dear to me, how cannabis can help people with cognitive impairment, which could progress into Alzheimer's. Are you up on that?
Again, it's one of those things where I don't. Yes, I know a little bit about it, but I don't necessarily like to give the doctor advice on it. I try to prepare people for a conversation with their doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of important questions that people can ask. And again, the information is out there. And I have a long list of links that I refer to and downloads that I'll read from time to time when I need to specifically help somebody.
Well, on the subject of cognitive impairment and Alzheimer's, my research by reading everything I can possibly do about it online is that cannabis actually creates neurogenesis, which is the rebuilding of brain cells. And when I'm taking care of my 87-year-old mom, and she was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. And the reports that and studies that I've been seeing from other places in Europe and so forth say that it actually will rebuild brain cells that you have lost. And compared to a pharmaceutical drug called Aricept, which I'm not sure if you've heard of, but that's a prominent drug. Aricept, they say will not reverse cognitive impairment or the stages of Alzheimer's, but will make the patient comfortable. And of course, the studies that I've seen about cannabis is that it actually will reverse it. It can reverse it with low doses of cannabis, THC, will actually rebuild the brain cells and can reverse Alzheimer's and cognitive impairment. Now, of course, we're early in talking about all of this, but when the pharmaceutical product that they have available out there says that will just make the patient comfortable and will not reverse it, it's what kind of choice is there when pharmaceuticals like really, your liver, your kidneys, it affects you in so many other ways. So people should read up on that and Google Alzheimer's and cognitive impairment and cannabis. What else? When people are asking you how to get started again after they haven't had cannabis for maybe 30 years, what's your advice on getting them to try it? Because if they have a bad time the first time, they're just going to shine it on and not get back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And edibles is probably one of the easiest entry points to people. It also kind of raises a little bit of alarm for me. Just the fact that it takes, depending upon your metabolism, it could take an hour before you start to feel the effects. For some people,
right. It takes me 3 hours if I eat an edible. Absolutely 3 hours to feel any kind of effect. And of course, like you were getting to, that can be a bad scene if somebody eats a brownie and waits an hour and they don't feel anything and they eat another one. You really have to give it time. My personal advice is to get people used to maybe taking one puff of a vaporizer maybe first before going to actually smoking a joint or a bowl, because the vaporizing high is a lot different than if you're smoking a joint or a bowl. It's a little bit more mellower. It's a little bit more head clear. But I might just friendly disagree with you about starting somebody with an edible, because that can be really trippy. And I've had people take 10 milligrams of an edible, a very small dose, and really get very, very too high and not want to go back to it. So
I'd have to agree with you there. If they're open to smoking then absolutely, vaporizing or inhaling is the best way because you get the immediate effect. You're able to kind of put the brakes on it, whereas with edibles, you can't.
Right. Well, I've been reading, look, we're at the beginning right now, since Prohibition has been going on for over 80 years. We're at the beginning of all the real reality of what this plant can do is now coming out because we have more anecdotal evidence about cancer and different things. And of course, there's all kinds of science happening in Israel and Spain and
Lots
the
of it.
UK and the Netherlands and so forth. So we're able to learn a lot from that. Obviously, you had mentioned arthritis and so forth. So topicals obviously would be a way for people who have bad knees, bad joints, bad elbows, bad fingers.
A lot of inflammation. Yep.
Inflammation. It's an anti-inflammatory. What do you think the strangest question is you've gotten from a senior who wants to learn about cannabis again since they haven't had it in a long time?
Probably one of the wildest things I heard was smoking hemp clothing.
Seriously?
Yes, seriously.
Someone said, my grandson gave me this T-shirt made out of hemp, and so they're asking you if they can like chop that up and smoke it.
It was a someone saw a younger kid wearing a hemp hat with a big pot leaf, and just I don't know what they thought. I didn't really dive into their rationale too long, but I quickly let them know that no, you're not gonna get high from smoking hemp clothing.
Well, yes, that is true, and of course you can't really get high from the hemp plant either. There's just so little THC. But as we know, there's so many other things in the hemp plant.
Lots
the
of CBD.
CBDs, and there's still anti-inflammatory properties to hemp. And of course, hemp now is being grown legally in Colorado and I think Kentucky and Tennessee as well. And that's starting to happen. And it's great to see that while the activists are trying to pass medical marijuana legislation and legalizing for adults, that they're also making sure that hemp gets on this agenda as well.
It's kind of a big circle going back to what you were saying about Alzheimer's medication. Is there's a lot of medication out there that will basically kind of treat things. It's not necessarily going to cure it. It's going to treat things, and that's a continuing market. The cannabis plant, which with the whole plant medicine actually has shown advantages to turn that around. Hemp is an amazingly usable plant. There's a lot of uses for it, and there's a lot of industries that are kind of entrenched out there that stand to lose market share, similar to the pharmaceutical industry.
Absolutely. The alcohol industry is terribly afraid of this, and it's really interesting that in your state, you're in Washington State, correct?
Correct.
The alcohol people are in charge of the cannabis program, if I'm not mistaken. I understand promoting legalization by tax and regulate like alcohol, but that's it. There's nothing else like cannabis and alcohol where they can cross. Alcohol is so nothing like cannabis, and people die from alcohol and have had terrible lives, and their families have suffered, and there's all kinds. Alcohol. There's no comparing the two.
Destructive.
It's very, very destructive.
Very destructive.
So, what's happening in Washington? I know that there's a lot of controversy with the medical industry.
Yes.
Can you give us an update on your knowledge of? Are you sending your seniors, if they get a medical card? Are you sending them to medical dispensaries? And is there a difference between a medical dispensary and a rec dispensary?
Yeah, absolutely. There is night and day differences. For now, I do recommend some select medical dispensaries. I've kind of made it a point to go and visit just myself as me a few of these dispensaries, and you understand why the state wanted to kind of corral what was going on, but at the same time, there's a lot of responsible actors who have been in it, and they stand to lose their businesses. But yeah, medical right now is not the best situation for people. Obviously, 2012, Washington passed I-502, recreational marijuana sales. And just this year, a couple months back, SB 5052, I believe it was, is going to fold the medical program into the recreational program.
All right. So does that mean that the medical dispensaries that are currently licensed can go rec, or is it that rec can sell medical? How is that?
Currently, recreational shops, they're not even allowed to mention the word medical. But at that date, there loosely is going to be a certification from the state, which they haven't unveiled yet, which will allow them to get a certification and sell medicinal marijuana as well. For the current medical marijuana dispensaries, basically, if you've been open for 3 years, you've been paying your taxes, and you're licensed or registered in the city and state, you should have a fast track to be brought into the I-502 system. But if you've opened since then, which there was an explosion after recreational passed, you're kind of out of luck. And that creates an interesting paradox, because where is all this cannabis going to go?
Right. It's probably going to go to other states, most likely. But so what happened after recreation passed? Are you saying that people just opened up unlicensed dispensaries?
Yeah. In 2011, the governor then, Greg Wire, had the chance to regulate the medical marijuana industry. And it actually passed the House and the Senate here, got to her desk, and she vetoed those sections based on the premise she doesn't want to make her employees do something that would violate federal law. So at that point, it remained in the gray area. 2012, recreational sales passed, and the lottery to get a license was ridiculous. The fees associated with that was ridiculous. The taxes are ridiculous, and a lot of people took advantage of that gray area and just said, well, I'm going to open up a shop, call it whatever I want, and sell my weed.
Now, that pretty much happened in the medical industry before recreational as well, didn't it? Didn't people just open up medical marijuana dispensaries without really going through a process? Wasn't it like a Wild West there for a while? And I've been reading that they've been closing down a lot of medical dispensaries. What's going on with that?
There was an influx in, I believe, 2008 and again 2010. Washington State changed who had the ability to issue licenses, and it went to RNs. And once RNs were able to, you had a lot of different groups popping up offering medical cards, and basically you would go in and there's a waiting room with 50 people. One by one, they would pay their money, get their card, and leave.
All right, so that has stopped now?
Well, yeah, because there's an end. July 1st, 2016, medical cards are going to have no significance. But up until that point, one of the things that caught a lot of heat and gave the people in favor of this new bill is there were scenes from, I believe it was last year's Hemp Fest, where you basically walk into a tent and pay $200 and you walk out with a card. And it's really unfortunate for the people who need this as a medicine, for dispensaries who have been doing it for patients for many years and on a legitimate level. It just got exploited, and that was all the reason they needed to kind of fold medical into the rec system. And there's a lot of disadvantages for the med patients.
Well, I'm guessing that one of them, a major one, would be the price and the taxes. I don't believe that, if they're a medical patient, they shouldn't be paying the same rate. I think, what is it, 37% in Washington?
Yeah, 37% is the new tax. It's going to be at the retail level, and it's the consumer's responsibility, not the retailer's, so they don't have to pay taxes on that as income. Previously, it was a 25% tax at each level, the producer, processor, and retailer. Hard for them to make money that way, so now they're going to tax the patients. patients are exempt from state tax, which I believe is 8 to 10%, depending upon where you live. But now they're responsible for 37% above what they were paying. And actually, recreational stores are still a few dollars higher than medical stores.
So what's going on? Are there some activists or legislators that are trying to change that? Because, as a medicine, I'm sure that there's no tax on your medicine if you go to Walgreens or CVS. So is there some activists out there that are trying to save the medical patients?
There are.
Yeah. What's going on with that?
Yep, there are. There's a couple lawsuits out there right now, and a couple referendums that were just in the signature phase. I'm kind of blanking on the number at the moment, but it was June 27th was the cutoff. I think I-372. I'll have to double check that. But yeah, basically they're trying to save the medical system as it was. Hopefully put some more regulations in there and tighten it up. But, access, again, is another big concern.
It's really sad, and I said it on this show many, many times, that with legalization for adult use, the people that are proponents of that and are writing these bills need to save the medical programs. Without the medical programs, starting, of course, with California in '96 and everybody that has now, come around and legalized medical marijuana, we need to save the medical program. It's a different industry. It's not the same as the recreational industry. People need to be educated about how this is a medicine, and there needs to be medical dispensaries so that people who want to use it that way can go in and get hopefully some educated advice from bud tenders and consultants and so forth. So that's the real important thing that I've been stressing for a very long time. Now, Chad, again, your website is seniorsmmjnetwork.com. I want everybody to check that out. I see that you also, besides having seminars to cover the laws and health benefits and so forth and how to medicate, you do give some grow seminars as well. Do you do that personally, or do you have a special grower come in and educate?
I haven't done a couple personally myself, and it's basically just small level for people who are licensed. I want to be able to give people the opportunity to provide their own medicine, grow it organically at home. You know what goes into it, so you feel comfortable coming out of it. I was actually excited. I'm trying to connect right now with Dr. Beth Fisher down in Seattle. I know that she does a lot of work. And
she's obviously been on the show, and I'm sure you heard that when she's been on a couple times. She's really a trip, and she's out there, educating like you are. So, what is the current rule or law for recreational growers as compared to if you are in the medical program? What can you grow? Is there a difference between the rules?
There is. Right now, recreational you can't grow. We're one of the few states with legal recreational marijuana where you can't grow it.
Well, that's a drag, because they should be freeing the plant. You can grow in the other rec states. Well, that's going to need to get worked on for sure. And if you're a medical card holder, what are you allowed to do?
Okay. As of today, you're allowed to have 15 plants and 24 ounces as a 60-day supply. Unfortunately, with the new bill that passed July 1st next year, 4 plants and 1 ounce, or 2 ounces if you register with the state. So that's a drastic cut.
So they're really putting these people in jeopardy, because if you grow 4 plants, I guarantee you're going to have more than a couple ounces.
This is true. Oregon, I think, did it right. They've got some good laws, and they also took that into account when they passed their grow law. They have different limits for at home if you're growing versus what you can carry personally. So I think Washington has a lot of catching up to do in that area. But yeah, you do kind of run a surplus. But one of the things that I tell people is tinctures. Tinctures is a great way to medicate without having to inhale. It uses, more pot than you'd probably want to buy, So there are a lot of ways to utilize some of that extra cannabis.
Absolutely. Converting it to oil obviously would be the most medicinal way to go, and to make some canna drops or canna capsules or so forth. I believe that's the real medicine. So once again, it's seniors with an S, MMJNetwork.com. Chad, is it Simer or Simmer?
Simer. Yep.
I thought it was Simer.
Right
of
the
one,
first time.
From the 1M. Check out Chad's website. And is there anything else that you'd like to say to our listeners today before we sign off?
Yeah, you can definitely check us out on the website. We're also on Twitter at MMJ Network, and Facebook. Give us a like there. Just Seniors MMJ Network.
Very good. Chad Simer, it's seniors, MMJNetwork.com. Thank you for talking to us at Medical Marijuana Radio, and you have a wonderful rest of your summer. We'll be right back. Thank you, Chad, for your interview. We'll be right back after this.
Isn't it the hardest question to answer to when the only thing you want to say is bad? Isn't it the hardest question to answer to when the only thing you want to do is cry? Oh, it is so hard to look at you and smile and just reply, I am fine. 'Cause you know I'm not. You know I'm not. 'Cause my eyes don't lie. Isn't it the hardest question to answer to when the only thing you want to say is bad? Isn't it the hardest question to answer to when the only thing you want to do is cry? The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana.
Thank you, Chad Seimer, and everybody out there has seniors in your lives. Play this episode for them, and maybe you can make them feel better. I want to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. Also, don't forget my Wednesdays with Larawana show on cannawanabuy.com. That's cannawanabuy.com. If you're a dispensary, a head shop, a patient, great products for the cannabis industry, fast shipping, and great prices. If you miss any of these shows and you'd like to hear some old ones, we've been doing these for 6 years now. You can go to my website, which is medicalmarijuanaradio.com or MMJRadio.com. My YouTube channel is LSLove88 on YouTube. Timeforhemp.com puts it up on their website. They put it up on Spreaker and iHeartRadio. You can see Medical Marijuana Radio on CannabisTube.net. On Now TV, channel 937. We're also heard on KHI, 1580 AM Colorado Springs, 420radio.org, Pothead Universe Radio, and on the Roku box, the U.S. Weed Channel. Info at mmjradio.com if you'd like to send us an email.
Shalom.